I haven't seen the 1990 version of Robert Dahl's The Witches in ages, and after seeing the 2020 remake, it might warrant circling back and checking it out for a closer comparison. I will say that The Witches 1990 was downright terrifying, even though I was in my teens when I saw it. How does this modern remake by Mr. Back to the Future Robert Zemeckis fare? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. While you might be watching this video on the Kings of Horror Network, I urge you to click over to my ML Miller Frights page and give it a like, share with your buddies across the electronic superhighway, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Please get the word out to new folks so we can make the Kings of Horror Network, as well as ML Miller Frights, bigger and better. Be on the lookout for a new Kickstarter campaign for an anthology I participated in called Nightmare Theater. This is a collection of short horror stories made by a whole gaggle of talented souls. The project is being helmed by David Schrader and Clay Adams. I paired up with my pirouette artist extraordinaire Carlos Granda for a morbidly fun morality tale to filmgoers who dare break the rules of common courtesy in the wrong theater. If you're interested in fun, scary, and gory horror, please support the Nightmare Theater Kickstarter campaign. Look below for the link. The Witches 2020 is new, streaming on HBO Max. It's directed by Robert Zemeckis and written by Zemeckis, Kenya Barris, Guillermo del Toro, and based on the book by Robert Dahl. A young boy without a name, played by Jazier Bruno, suffers the tragic loss of his parents and is sent to live with his grandmother, played by Octavia Spencer. It is there that he first hears about witches, evil entities who loathe children to their core. Grandma once encountered a witch in her youth, and it haunts her to this day. When a witch approaches the boy in a department store, Grandma gathers him up and takes him to a fancy hotel so that they can hide out away from the evil hag. But this swanky hotel is the very spot where the Grand High Witch, played by Anne Hathaway, and her coven of witches meet for their annual conference. When he is caught spying on the witches, the boy is turned into a mouse, leaving it up to his new friends, who have also been turned into mice, and his grandma to find a way to reverse the spell and get rid of all these witches. I was suspect of the witches right from the start. Having just endured HBO's Lovecraft Country, I was prepping myself for the witches in The Witches to only be white women, given the African-American leads. Turned out these worries were all for naught, as there were a wide variety of witches of all different creeds and colors represented in the film. I was also relieved when the change in background of the lead character made for a different, but not particularly in-your-face layer of subtext to the story. It's more of a class statement rather than a racial one, which I found to be refreshingly progressive in this mainstream film. I have to admit, this film takes its time to get to the witchery. The first 15 minutes is pretty much witch-free as the boy gets acquainted to his grandmother's house and tries to cope with the grief of losing his parents. With the narration from Chris Rock, I thought for a minute HBO Max was trying to pull a fast one on me and slid in an episode of Everyone Hates Chris when I wasn't looking. But when the witchy stuff does happen, the dive into the macabre is pretty steep. I seem to remember more than one witch having a personality in the 1990s version of this movie. Here, the rest of the witches take a backseat to Anne Hathaway, who really is the only one who gets lines to speak. Hathaway gnaws on all the scenery and then some, having a blast playing this rare evil character. With the addition of some clever CG making her mouth wider than it usually is, and Hathaway already has a pretty wide smile, and CGs her hands and feet into three-pronged claws. Hathaway makes for a witch that is ripped right from your worst childhood nightmare. The Witches is Anne Hathaway's show, and the best moments center solely on her. She's definitely the one here who's going to make you shiver and pick all of your interests while watching this movie. At least that's what happened to me. That said, I question who the audience is for the witches. Once the witches arrive, things get extremely morbid and twisted. At first I was thinking this was a film I could introduce to my nephew and niece, ages 8 and 6. But after seeing Hathaway jut her face into the camera and her cheeks split into a horrifying grimace, I think this would be a little too much for them. Much of the horror in The Witches is amped up to 11, and I doubt any kid under 10 would be able to withstand it. And even then, parents should prepare their sheets for some pants-shitting nightmares if you let the kids watch it. But after the terrifying reveal of the witches, when the kids are turned into mice, things get all Stuart Little-y. There's slapstick and broad humor, broad acting from Stanley Tucci, who's really wasted in this role as the owner of the hotel, and things go to an extremely cartoonish and PG level of comedy for a good 45 minutes of the film. When the finale once again goes dark as witches are destroyed and transformed, evil meets a dark fate, more in-your-face witch faces happen, and even the fates of the mice children are extremely dark. While I know that Robert Dahl wrote a very dark book, the all-over-the-place tone Zemeckis delivers makes for a very uneven watch where the kiddies are going to be scared off in the opening moments, and the adults left watching are going to be bored with the kiddie antics in the latter half. So I seriously don't know who the audience is for this one, other than those overcome with nostalgia about the original. The Witches 2020 was entertaining, as I fall into that nostalgia category, and I'm not above childish entertainment. I don't know if all adults can say the same. But I do know that the witch scenes are downright uncanny and disturbing, specifically the look of the witches themselves. Much controversy has been clucked about concerning the deformed hands and feet of the witches being insensitive to those with limb abnormalities. To that, I really don't know what to say. Should we outlaw any hands in films so as to be sensitive to all people, with or without hands? What about Nightcrawler from the X-Men? Are his hands offensive? I'm bald, as are the witches in this movie. And I was never really offended at that fact. Something to think about. Working up a fuss because a fictional film depicts witches with 3 fingers and 1 toe seems to indicate to me that people really have a lot of free time on their hands and need to get a new hobby other than crowing on the internet. I'd love to have a civil discussion about it in the comments if anyone has contrary opinions. Of course, the original is better. It's grungier. The witches aren't CG, but twisted Jim Henson creations. The original's director, Nicholas Roeg, gives everything a dreamlike quality, which added to the surreal oddity to the film and made it extremely unique. It was disturbing, but the blend of horror and children's story felt more seamless. Zemeckis delivers a brightly lit, immaculately clean, and obsessively centered film that delivers an uneven concoction of horror and child comedy that doesn't really blend well. I had fun, and Hathaway's performance is chilling, but I prefer the original for a more fully satisfying film. I think I'll share that one with my niece and nephew this Thanksgiving instead. That'll be it for today. Please chime in the comments and let me know what you think of this video, how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. If you like this video, please pound that thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. Don't forget, I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look for. Grave Trancers is out right now, and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, will be out in November 18th in only the finest of comic book stores. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thank you so much for your time, and take care. You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're inside that